Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Do Things Different, shall we? This is your host, Luis. I am the executive director of Tech Forward. Um, we have a few things going on at Tech Forward. Let me get those out of the way. We have a pickleball tournament on September 6th at 9 a.m. You can go to our website for that, link below. We also going to be doing a black and green gala on November 1st, also on our website. And we have a we started our classes. We were able to have our first basic computer skills class a couple of weeks ago. It was pretty good. I have to admit that I got a lot out of it, both teaching and as someone who had to prepare for it. But it was good for the company. It was good for Tech Forward. We can do it again in August. I believe late August. We don't have a date yet, but you'll see it on social media and emails and such. And then we also have a blog since the last time we spoke. Link also on the website, and we have we're gonna start a newsletter, which we hope you all would uh, become a member of and check out what we had to say. Um, and that should be coming out next week. So now, rather than having you listen to me talk for 45 minutes, which let's face it, it can get a little boring. What we're going to do today is I'm going to share with you a conversation I had with a young man. His name is Andrew Musholt. He is a software developer for Napide, a national company based out of Quincy, Illinois. And I met Andrew at the Quincy Tech Group, which is a group that meets every once a month for lunch for a discussion led by a man named Jason Darnell. I hope you can find us on Facebook. I think we're on Facebook, and join the group. It's kind of fun. It's all things tech. So, but be a software developer or someone who's into technology because that's what we talk about. Anyway, so that's where I met Andrew, and Andrew and I had a very long conversation about a number of topics. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna split that conversation into segments, and we'll share those segments as we go. So without further ado, let's get on with the conversation. All right, welcome to Let's Do Things Different. I am your host, Luis Barnes with Tech Forward. We have a absolutely great guest with us today, Andrew Musholt. Do I say that right?
Technically, it's Musholt, but literally
Oh,
everybody gets it wrong. So I'm used to, and I'm good with
it's
whatever
okay.
whatever you want to
I
say. So,
I feel your pain because that MU,
hmm
is the same as my LU. People want to pronounce it like an O, and it's not.
Lois,
It's a U. Oh
Lois.
yeah, I am Lewis. I am Lewis. I am
I think
Lewis.
the question I had was, is it Louis or is it Luis?
Is Luis.
Luis. That's what I want
It's
to say.
Luis.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I tell you, I have been doing this for how old am I now? I'm 59, and I've been in this country for 45 years. And to this day, I still get my name mispronounced, and I get it mispronounced even by Hispanics, which
Oh,
cracks me up.
yeah,
Absolutely cracks me up. You know.
yeah.
All right, Andrew, you are a native of Quincy. You attended Quincy Notre Dame.
Yep.
You went to John Wood, Western Illinois University, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
And then you did what was your master's at Quincy for?
So basically, I'll just kind of tell the story because it is kind of an interesting story that kind of maybe gives you a better understanding of like just like who I am or whatever. But basically,
Bring it.
I've been interested in computers like ever since I was a kid. I did not know that I wanted it to be my career necessarily. I
Right.
just always liked computers. I liked making little programs. I liked making websites. I liked making games, right? Like little games using
Hmm.
programs and stuff. Not coding, just making games. But so I've always been interested in computers. I never thought it would be like a career necessarily. So I started out, I graduated from QND, went to John Wood, and I actually majored in graphic design when I started at John Wood, wanting to work on maybe websites.
That
Go,
was your
go
thought.
ahead. You have a
What was
question?
the reason for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
so basically like when I was younger, right? Like I would make games and stuff, but I would also make websites. Like I made like a website for my teacher, I made a website for my scout troop, I made a website for like my RuneScape clans that I was in and stuff like that.
As a
So I
teenager?
knew how to make websites. What's that?
As a teenager?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Really?
eighth grade was when I learned HTML for sure. I don't remember when I made like my first official website, but yeah,
That's
when I
pretty
was like a
awesome, man.
teenager. Yeah, yeah. And they were just like really basic, like no programming or anything, just like basic like HTML websites and stuff like that. But
Eighth
um,
grader doing websites. Come on, man. That's pretty cool.
right, right. It was actually a programming for dummies book. I remember it. I still have it at my desk actually, and it taught you basic, the language. Was the language that I first learned, and I really liked it and everything. But honestly, like the last chapter in that book was HTML. It was just sort of like a like, hey, we just taught you basic, but also this is kind of how the website of thing
Right.
works.
Right.
I thought learning basic was interesting, but that last chapter in that book on HTML, I was just like blown away by how cool it was because there was like no compiler, you know what I mean? There was no like, it wasn't very complicated. It was very forgiving of mistakes. Anybody that has a computer can make an HTML document and make a web page instantly.
Right.
And so I was absolutely, to this day, that's what I love about the web is just how easy it is to just get something started and going, and anybody can do it kind of thing. So that's how I got into it. Then I made websites for my teacher, my RuneScape clans, blah 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 blah. So I went to John Wood, majoring in graphic design initially, and that's when I kind of went through what I would just call like, and a lot of college kids do this, just kind of like an identity crisis where you don't
Oh yeah.
really know, you're
Oh yeah.
free for the first time. And you're like, oh, I just get to like decide. Like nobody's telling me what to do. I just kind of get to decide what I want to do. Well, what do I want to do? And so I ended up switching my major like so many different times. I was in psychology at one point, I was in education at one point. Joined the Army Reserves, got back from training, and decided I wanted to be a police officer. So I was majoring in law enforcement, which has nothing to do with, really doesn't have anything to do with
It's the pivot.
computers. Right, exactly. So I went through that for years, and honestly, I wasn't super focused on my schoolwork. I wasn't, really. It was probably just one of those things where I wasn't like super challenged. I wasn't challenged enough to be able to focus on it. So basically, what happened was like I was majoring in law enforcement. I had moved from John Wood to Western, which is the 4 year university, and I was up there, and I was like in law enforcement. I was going to classes in quotes. I was not paying. I wasn't really trying with my homework. I was sleeping in class. I was partying all the time. I just was not focused at all. And going to Western is not, I mean, it's one of the cheaper schools in Illinois, but it's not free. You know what I mean? And I had help from the Army and everything, but I was still working like part time jobs to
Right.
pay my bills and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, I'm working really hard to pay these bills. And I don't even know if this is really what I want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I basically just kind of, had like a honest conversation with myself, where I was like, dude, you just like need to figure out like something. You need to figure out what you're going to do because you can't just live in paradise forever. Party, I can't just be doing this like sleeping through my life. You know what I mean? So basically, I was like, well, I really like computers, right? And I can still be a police officer with a computer science degree because they don't really care about
Right.
what your degree is. They just care that you have a degree and you can get hired. And so it's like, well, I'll try computer science and just see if how that goes. Got into computer science. It was super challenging, like right off the bat. The classes were so much harder. But I was back to like making stuff, kind of like I was doing with graphic design. And I was just kind of pulled back in. I was like, oh, I actually really feel good what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And so from that point on, I just got sucked back in. And then it was like I just decided like, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do going forward. So got my degree.
So what was your master's at Quincy for?
So my master's in Quincy it was an MBA, and to be honest with you, I just got it because NAPI paid for it. and they basically they don't give it to everybody, but if you say that you're going to stay with the company for a long time and things like that,
Right.
they have a program, and it doesn't pay for all of it. It pays for, a significant portion of it. But
Hey,
basically,
hey,
right. So basically, I was still fresh out of college, and I was just like, well, maybe if I ever want to go into management, or yeah, maybe in the future I want to do a different career, whatever. Like, it's not going to hurt me to have a master's degree, and if they're going to pay for it, absolutely. Why wouldn't I just go ahead and get it? And so I ended up getting the master's degree. And to be completely honest with you, MBAs have like the biggest stigma in the world in the developer industry. Like, nobody is like, oh, you have an MBA, good for you, like you must be really smart. Nobody
no, no,
nobody
no.
says that. But I just got it for that reason, and to be honest, it actually it's been pretty helpful in my career because I
Well,
make
but
business
what was the
applications.
the master's on though? What
It
was it
was
on?
just an MBA. I think it was like a master's in business administration with a
Okay, all
emphasis
right,
in marketing.
all
So
right. I'm gonna put you on the spot right off the bat because you and I have had this conversation before. Actually,
this
not
is the question you
long,
really
but
want to get to.
this is a question I really want to get to. So when I first started uh, in development, PHP was all the rage, right? PHP was everything. And I worked for this company called IMCO, and the developers in that company, when I first started there, they were using Visual Basic.
Mm,
I take that back. They were using Fox Pro, which
never heard
was
of it.
yeah. So so I'll tell you my quick story. So, and I'm glad it kind of worked out this way. So my father told me when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a teacher, right? And my father said, nope, there's a money in that. You're going to have to support a family someday, and you don't want to do that. So, okay. So my father decided he's still alive. He's a retired now. He's a doctor. And he decided he wanted to open his own practice. So we went out looking for software for him to run the office. He
Mm,
didn't like anything he saw. So this man who's already working 14, 16, 18-hour days decides that he wants to write his own software to,
that's
to
super
run the
cool.
company. And
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. So we went and bought this still cracks me up. It was a Zenith something computer with a 20 meg drive and I think 512 megs of memory. I think it was. It
Wow.
was this quote unquote beast of a machine
At
in
the time, you'll never need
1980.
more than 512. That's all you'll ever
No,
need.
no, 1981, 82, I think it was. And you can and of course as you can imagine, this doctor about a week into this idea comes to me and says, "Yeah, I don't have time for this. You do it." So it was originally written in something called DBase 2. DBase 2 was owned by a company called Ashton Tate, which no longer exists. And then that became DBase 3 and DBase 4, and that turned into FoxPro. FoxPro was basically a database development language, and it was think of Access, Microsoft Access, where you can actually do front ends and Access. Not
Hmm.
complicated stuff, but but it's all data driven,
Spin up
and that's
dashboards and
Fox. That's
things.
what FoxPro was. And I
Gotcha.
graduated from that to when I started working at this company, IMCO in Kentucky, uh, to graduated to FoxPro. Then we did a Fox Base, which was the newer version, and then they started using SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. And the moment we flipped to Microsoft SQL Server, then we changed the programming language from Fox Base to Base to Visual Basic. So that was my first foray into programming with Visual Basic. And I'm getting all excited about this because, I've done data up to that point, never true development, right?
Programming. Hmm.
And I started researching. And I'm telling you right now, Andrew, just about everywhere I look, this is 1994, 95, somewhere there.
I was 4 years
It was
old.
PHP sucks. Don't use
Yes.
PHP. PHP is unsecure. It is. Oh my God! Don't use PHP
Right.
because it was also at the time, and I'm sure it still is, a fairly easy language to learn.
Right.
So hey, if you want to get into development, get into PHP because it was used everywhere, and it was every website is built on PHP. But then there
Yes.
was all those warnings about PHP.
Hmm.
So I didn't. I stuck with Visual Basic, and then from there on, I just really only worked on data. but
right.
that stigma to this day
The
is
stigma's
still
around, but let
it
me ask
still
you a
lives in my brain.
yeah.
Like,
Let
don't
me let me
touch
ask let me
PHP.
ask you a question though. What happened? Where are the Visual Basic
Oh, they're
websites?
gone. They're dead.
They're gone.
They're gone.
You
Oh,
don't hear
absolutely.
people. You don't
Oh,
hear that
absolutely.
ever.
And that's
Yeah.
it is amazing to me how, and even today, I don't know what the percentage is, but a very large percentage of websites in the world are written in PHP, right?
Yes.
Or at least have
Yes.
PHP being part of it. And yet,
Mm-hmm.
to this day, that stigma still follows PHP.
Yeah.
So, my
Yeah.
question to you is, why PHP? Because that seems to be all you do.
Right. So the thing is, I'll say first of all that people complaining and having a stigma about anything is literally just
I
what
lost I
happens
lost
like
you there.
with any technology. You do not Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's blurry on my end too, but it looks like it's catching up. So, yeah, I mean, having a stigma, right, is just part of any new technology, right? So PHP, right? If we're talking like, okay, because like there's Web one, which is like static HTML websites, just very basic. Like you don't need any
Right.
programming at all. You just have a website that's information. You read the information, and then you go to a different website. That
Correct.
was Web 1, which was like the 90s, right? The thing is, it didn't matter what you used in Web 1 because it was basically
It
HTML,
was
right?
static pages, nothing to it.
Right. Web 2, now you are interacting with a web page, right? You're not just sitting there consuming a page, going to another page, consuming it. You are typing stuff in, you're making posts, blogs, uploading pictures, right? Communicating with other people, chatting, all that kind of stuff. That was Web 2. The what probably the language if you were to say this is the language that got us from web 1 to web 2, it was php was the one that got us there. Python was around. I think Python, they probably, I'm sure they made websites with Python and everything, and it was there, it was probably important. In no way was it php getting us from web 1 to web 2. It was php. And so that's why, like, you have a lot of these technologies, a lot of these frameworks, platforms, everything, right, that run PHP. They're still on PHP today. WordPress is the one
Yep.
that everybody knows. WordPress uses PHP. It's old school PHP too. If you look at the code, they have not adopted necessarily all of like the latest and greatest practice. They're
But
using
to
like
his
old school
credit, it still
PHP.
works. To his
Right,
credit, it
exactly.
still
So that's the
works.
thing. It had a stigma. It was very popular. It had a stigma. It honestly was not great. It had some security vulnerabilities and everything else. But dude, the thing that made it great was if you know just a little bit of PHP, you could make a website that was interactive.
Yep.
Any web hosting that you signed up for, they got PHP. Whether they have Python is sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to install it or run it on a separate service. Every web host, everyone that you sign up for is going to have PHP. It's probably going to have WordPress on it too. You know what I mean? Um,
I cannot get away from WordPress.
right, nobody
I
can.
cannot get
We're
away from
just
it.
we're just everybody's stuck on
Okay,
WordPress.
but
But
but it now keep in mind I am a data guy. Okay,
sure, sure,
that's really where my life has been. So I know very little about software development per se. Okay,
sure.
now I am learning, etc. But so what's interesting to me is when I when I started Tech Forward a couple of years ago, and I started looking, okay, so what are we going to teach, right? So if you're going to teach software development, what do you want to teach? Just about every website, every research, every survey that I read was ranking Python way up there,
Hmm.
right? PHP was on the list, but what today by no means is considered the best choice, right? So it it's now Python started as a uh, uh, backend language where you throw it at the server, you can do all kinds of tasks, with
Hmm.
Python, but it was not used to create a website. That
Hmm.
evolved, mind you,
Yes.
into what it is today, and now Django and Flask, you can do all kinds of wonderful stuff with Python, right? But even today, PHP is not looked at as the choice to build a website.
Right.
So you've been doing it for how many years have you been using PHP from day one?
Well, yeah, and I do want to back up just a little bit. So what I would challenge people to do, because I will say you are definitely right that it had a stigma back in the day. It had a stigma. The guy that like made PHP is kind of known, at least from my impression, or the impression that I get is like he is not necessarily known as like the guy that is always like, we need to be making all these changes to PHP. He tends to be
Right.
kind of like a, nah, we don't need that. Now we don't need that. Like, resistance to change, or maybe he's just one of those people that thinks that, like,
It works. Why change
these
it?
it works, why change it?
Yeah.
Maybe these new improvements are going to add like complexity or whatever, right? I don't know the specifics, but I just know that he's not necessarily the guy that's like, or wasn't the guy that was like, oh, we need to be making all these changes, or what.
Right.
The thing is, PHP, if you think about it, it kind of like it went kind of downhill in terms of like its capability and what people thought about it. It kind of fell off a little bit. But right around when I started programming with PHP was when they were converting from PHP 5.6 to PHP 7, and now we're on PHP 8. They have made some crazy, crazy good improvements to PHP. It is so much faster, it's so much more capable. And when you pair PHP with a framework like Symfony, or Laravel, it does everything that you need it to do. Um, I definitely get the stigma, and I know that it has had that stigma in the past. It has been going through a glow up over the last couple of years. So that is something that I don't think that,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. So I think that people are basically, if I would put it this way, it's like, okay, you looked at PHP, let's say 5 years ago or 10 years ago, maybe. Yeah, it was kind of in a rough spot. It has come back up. It's really in a good spot. To be honest, my biggest complaint with PHP today, like, I'm not a huge fan of putting dollar signs in front of my variables. That's something that I still to this day am just like, I really wish I didn't have to have the freaking dollar sign in front of variables. But there's that, like, seriously, that still irritates me. And then the other thing is that their functions are really inconsistent. You'll have like, get type is one word, and then get class is like get underscore class.
Ah,
They're
okay.
not consistent. That's part of its history. It feels kind of cobbled together. Other than that, from like a performance standpoint and like what it's capable of doing, no complaints. Like, it
Okay. So
really has come back.
do you? I mean, obviously, you also use HTML, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But is there? Because I see your post on LinkedIn, especially,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and uh, and we'll talk
Speaking of
about.
stigma, but having a glow up, LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I used to think LinkedIn was like the worst thing ever. It's
Let's
gotten
talk about that. Let's talk about that because not right now, but let's talk about that in a second.
sure.
But but my point is this. So you've been a PHP guy all your life, okay? So I have been a data guy all my life,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So I get let go from a job a couple of years ago. So now I'm looking for I'm looking for another job, right? And what made me start Tech Forward was the fact that for me to make what I was making when I was let go, I had to know not just data, but I had
Mm-hmm.
to know A and B and C and D, right? Which
Yes.
I spent the last 30 years of my life not knowing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my question to you is, you have PHP under your belt, considering the job market the way it is, and I don't doubt there are PHP jobs out there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But are you have you ever considered, maybe I should learn Python, maybe
Yeah.
I should learn something else,
Right. It's
just in
definitely
case.
right. It's definitely a good question. And I would say, if you're not me, like if you're just a software developer who wants to make as much money as possible, right? Where there's a lot of people in this industry right now where they
It's
definitely
all about
don't
the money.
have the passion for programming, for solving problems. They have the passion for, hey, I can make a lot of money in this field.
Correct.
If you want to just make a bunch of money in this field, the best thing that you can do is to switch jobs every 2 years. If you stay with a company for a long period of time, you're not going to make as much money as you could switching jobs all the time. And if you want to switch jobs, you are better off learning a pretty wide
Right.
array of technologies, learning your leak code, your algorithms and things like that, because that's what they interview for and everything else. So if that's what you're trying to do, absolutely, you should learn a lot of different things.
Yeah, but you never become good at anything.
Exactly. If you're me, or you're somebody that wants to stay with a company for a long time, right? Um, for me, I don't really have any big plan to leave NapHide, and NapHide is very PHP, right? All of our
Correct.
web
Correct.
applications are Symfony PHP. I work on Magento, which is one of the biggest, like it's a huge PHP e-commerce platform. um it's all PHP, right? And that keeps me so busy. I don't have time. Like, I could go and learn the basics of Python, but to be honest, it's not really going to help me at my job because we don't really use Python yet. If we start using Python more, which we are using it for some things, and if I get involved in those things, I will absolutely learn Python. And I've done a little, I've played with Python, but for
And
me,
it's
yeah.
a decision. Listen. Yes. Do I have some regrets about not learning something else? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, because obviously I was not able to get a job coming out.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I wouldn't know what I know if I would if I kept
Hop all the
flipping,
time.
if I kept hopping all the time, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, though, so one of the things that I have run into, or been talking about with people and been hearing about, is that an application is not written by one individual. And what I mean by that is that, fine, Andrew knows PHP, right?
Hmm.
But the application also needs to do, there's data, there's a data side of this. Okay, does Andrew know data? No, we need to
Hmm.
find somebody who does that. Well, then you have to learn to communicate between the data and the front end, right? So
Yes.
an application is never done by one particular language in its entirety, right?
Hmm.
So therefore, I would expect you, Andrew, that you know some bit about data. Are you
Hmm.
an expert on it? No way in hell, because that's not your forte,
Forte.
right?
Hmm.
But is that conversation, that when we started thinking about what are we going to teach, right? The question came down to, are we teaching one thing, or are we teaching two or three things?
Yes.
Because in this, again, using my experience, in this world that we live in, I knew, at least for what I saw online, I knew that without one thing wasn't going to get you an entry level position. Keep in mind, that's who we're after, right?
Hmm.
Entry level positions. So if you know JavaScript, if you know HTML, if you know Python, at least entry level Python, entry level JavaScript, HTML, and
Hmm.
data, you have a better shot at getting that entry level position. And by better shot, I mean you hopefully will have a wider selection of jobs.
Right.
Because if I say I'm going to teach you Python and Python only,
Hmm. Yes.
the chances that you get in that entry level position go down a bit.
Right. Right.
So,
Absolutely.
but but yet I'll be the first one to say, get through that entry level stuff, get that job, figure out, maybe they are a Python shop, right?
Hmm.
And you got your foot on the door. Okay, you know what? From here on, you learn everything there is to learn about Python, because that's what the company uses. That's what they're gonna want out of you. And
Yeah.
let's be fair, that is used in the world, so it
Yeah.
won't
I
hurt
would
you
I
to
would
know it.
say though it's kind of complicated because it's not necessary. Like, I mean, every company's different. You know what I mean? Like, some of them are gonna be like, you have to know Python, and we really care about that. A lot, like, to be completely honest, like, I knew that PHP Python was probably something that you would want to talk about and stuff. But to be completely honest with you, I think that if you would ask most senior level experienced, not the job hoppers, not the juniors that are
Correct.
always talk about the
Correct.
latest and greatest thing and leak code and everything else, they're bouncing all these different jobs, they're making all this money. If you talk about the people that actually stay at companies and like they really focus on problems and they're that kind of a person, that kind of a senior, right? Like, where you're like, I solve problems for my company, right? And I'm not saying that that's me, by the way, but I'm just saying this
Yeah, I'm
theoretical
with you.
person. If you ask those people, which language should I learn? To be completely honest, they're probably all going to tell you it doesn't matter which language you learn. You need to make sure that you understand the fundamentals, right? Because if you
Oh, dude.
understand, and everybody says this, we all say this, but I don't think that people actually
It,
like heed this advice. But like, really, you learn the fundamentals, you can learn other programming languages very, very, very quickly. If you speak the common language that is like across all programming languages, if statements, for loops, algorithms, design patterns, it doesn't matter what language you're using. Yes, you can argue functional versus object oriented and stuff like that, but for the most part, you learn programming, you know how to program. You can
I'm
program in
gonna go
any
lower than
language.
that. So I'm gonna go lower than that because when I first started looking into what do we teach, how we teach it, I was asking anybody, right? Any developer I knew. I
Mm-hmm.
asked my daughter, who's a teacher, teaches math, right? And I'm gonna tell you right now, Andrew, the very first thing all of them said was this: teach them how to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I'm glad that they
because
said that.
it doesn't
That's the
matter what
right
language
answer.
you teach. It doesn't matter. And my daughter, again, math teacher, she said, Dad, it doesn't matter what level of math. It doesn't matter whether it's science, history, anything. If
Mm-hmm.
they know how to solve a problem, they're gonna go far. But
Yes,
the people that
absolutely.
just stare at a problem and go, I don't know what to do, I,
or
those are
they
the
or
ones
they
that
expect
no,
the language is the solution to the problem. Like, oh, the problem here is not that
yeah,
I don't know this domain. The problem is I'm not using Python. We software engineers super guilty of that. Like we a lot of us don't fully understand that. Like we need to be saying that
yeah.
more. That it is about
But
solving problems, you
it
know.
it it really begs the question, and it, thankfully I learned to solve problems when I was a kid. Okay, and at least I was having that mindset. I have a problem. How do I fix it? You know, but the problem is that don't you think that that is something that I how do I say this? I don't know that it can be taught. It can be taught to some extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, the greatest thing about a problem is you have to let your mind. You have to tell yourself, okay, I don't know how to solve it. But what I do know is I can take this step.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do this. Okay, again, it doesn't solve the problem, but I can do this. Okay, once I do that, okay, where do I go from here? Let's go to the next step.
Iterate until you
That
figure
men,
it out. Yep.
that mentality I can teach,
Yes.
right?
Cool.
But
Cool.
the people that I'm sorry, they are there's a lot of people out there that just cannot even get to that step.
They don't
They freeze.
understand the iteration. Okay, like another word maybe you would use for this is like agile, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
specifically you're talking, yes, when you say agile, you're talking about, you know, coding software for for your users or your customers, not necessarily the programming itself as much. But like, yes, like being able to iterate until you figure something out, that is the skill. And what happens is that the framework or the programming language that you're using, learning that stuff, that's just the first step. It doesn't matter which what it is that you're trying to solve. That's literally just the first step. Just learning a new language or a new framework is not going to get you past that first step. And the whole thing with problem solving is that you need to learn how to take those steps and
yeah.
iterate until it is solved, kind of thing.
And
Yeah.
it is, but it also requires you to have an understanding of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand what the problem is, you can never take that first step.
Mm-hmm.
You may not have a solution to the problem, but you have to understand the problem. And I think those two things, being able to take that first step, but most importantly, how do I teach you to understand the problem, right?
Defining the problem, understanding
Define
it.
the problem. Because the
Mm-hmm.
moment you start defining the problem, guess what you're doing? You're breaking it down into steps,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh,
And
wait a
then
minute.
you
Now,
decide what to use to.
exactly.
Yes. Yep.
So that to me was I I I, I became a director. I mean, I was a manager for a while. I was a director after that, and to be honest with you, because I was already working with seasoned developers, even the young ones have been working for 2, 3, 4 years. That notion never crossed my mind. I always figured, though, they know what they're doing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to
Oh,
teach
so
that.
you were in a position, you were the manager, and you were like, why are they not solving these problems that I have? They're talking about stuff all
Yeah,
day, but like it doesn't seem like they're actually solving my problem.
it never occurred to me that does these people even know how to solve a problem?
Yes, that they're just living in the surface level.
Yeah,
They're talking
it
about the
just never crossed
framework
my
and stuff.
mind.
They're not talking about the business problems or whatever, right?
Yeah, because
That's
I had a fairly long conversation. My director, who ended up letting me go, was let go a few months later,
Hmm.
and we got talking. And he's one of the people that I asked the question. Was the first thing you want to teach? And we got talking about that. And he was like, "Do you remember so and so?" I go, "Yeah." That man could not solve a problem worth a lick, and no matter how hard we tried, he was a great programmer, which is interesting notion, by the way. How can you be a great programmer and not be able to solve a problem? And you know what he said? It's because he can follow you given requirements and you given detailed requirements. Oh, he'll build beautiful stuff.
Yes, that's another good point. Yep.
But you tell him, hey, okay, we have a problem. Here's a problem. Go solve it. He froze because he
Yep.
was waiting for who's going to tell me what to do. I need somebody to tell me what to do.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I
So,
was like, wow, I that makes sense.
mhm.
People, you may be an absolutely awesome programmer. You can follow instructions like anybody. But if you don't know how to solve a problem from scratch, then all you are is you. I don't know what you are.
The
I
way,
just don't.
yeah, the way that I understand what you're saying, the way that I would actually like word that, like I'm gonna put this in a mental model that people understand. I think that like left brain and right brain is too simple, but
Yeah, it is
it's
very
a good
simple.
mental model to just like talk about things. So like I would say, like, again, this is very rough, but I would very roughly say that like right brained creative people, they are going to be better at deciding what the problem is and like what we need to do to solve it and stuff like that. Whereas a left brain person is going to actually be able to execute on those things.
Yeah.
So you have people that are right brain that tend to be managers. You have people that are left brain that tend to be the programmer, right? And so a good manager is going to be the person who is able to understand a problem and put those into tasks and give it to the program, and the programmer can execute on those tasks. Most programmers, I would argue, tend to be left brain, and if you just say, hey, here's a problem, go figure out how to solve the problem, they might not know how to do that. But if you say this is how we're going to solve the problem, they will be able to execute on that very, very effectively. I have coworkers who are extremely good at executing on things, but they don't understand the bigger problem. I have other coworkers, like I consider myself this. Like I understand the problem. Like I take the time and the energy to really understand a problem. Like what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve here? I would say I'm not as good at actually executing on those problems. I'm not as fast at them as getting code made, debugging and things like that. So a unicorn, so to speak, the unicorn developer is the one that is a little bit of both and is able to just do the whole thing, right? Where they're able to understand the problem, define it, understand the domain and everything, and they're able to execute on it. The thing is,
Oh,
most of us are not
I got
unicorns.
a
We tend to be one or the other.
I got a funny story about that, and
Yeah.
this goes back when I was a teenager when I was learning um, D-Base 2. I have a cousin, Charlie, and Charlie had to be. I think Charlie was a year or two older than me, so he came to visit. Came to visit us, and my dad was showing him, the program and stuff, and uh, I have I have the Roomba running.
I also
Anyway,
noticed that we're at like 30 minutes too, so I didn't know if you
that's all
wanted
right.
okay.
Now we're gonna switch here in a second. Don't worry. But Charlie, who had knowledge of DBase too, he himself had been working a PhD. So my dad, we had a problem. I don't remember what the problem was, but we having a problem with something, and my dad was like, "Charlie, will you take a look at this? See, what do you think?" This guy, and again, 16, 17 years old, maybe, sat down, and I'm not kidding, Andrew. He wrote perfect code, and I mean, when he said he was done, there were no errors. It did what it was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But ask him to explain what he did. I I don't know. I it but the guy wrote perfect code. It was beautiful. It
Mm-hmm.
was beautiful to see. It ran to perfection. It solved the problem. And in my head I'm going, you SOB. I've spent,
Yeah. Well, I
God
will
knows
say
how much
though,
time doing this,
I gotta, I
and
gotta, I gotta kind of stick up for the guy too, because a lot of times what people will come at us with is like, oh, they know how to write code, but they don't know how to explain things to people or whatever.
Oh,
And
that's
like,
me, bud.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I would say like, unfortunately, that is kind of true. But like a lot of these guys that are making this software are very, very smart people
Oh, no doubt.
where it's a struggle for them because they literally know everything. Like I'm not even kidding. They know everything about programming computers. They do not know how to translate that into words that a average person who doesn't really understand computers is going to be able to understand, right? Because you listen to more like if you listen to like a like a Steve Jobs type, right? They are going up on stage and they are talking about technology and everything else, right? But when they're speaking, they may be saying things like tons of things that are just like totally not true or just like total BS, right? They're captivating the audience. They own the meeting, right? They've got their PowerPoint or whatever. They are, but they're also saying a bunch of stuff that's not actually true. They're saying the software can do things that it can't actually do. Whereas the guy who wrote the software, who actually knows what's going on and how it works and everything, he's just sitting there like, oh my gosh, like he sees a like a chop job or like he's like this guy is butchering it, but the audience loves it, right? Because it makes sense to them, and that really is his job is like to
Yeah.
communicate it.
So I
They're not the best communicators, but I think that that's okay. I honestly think that
I
that's
fail
okay.
at that. I am when it came to writing queries, I could write incredible queries, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had younger developers that worked for me, and what ended up happening a lot was they were having a problem. We had a deadline to meet. I had to step in and write whatever query I had to write, which was not a big deal. The problem was that then you turn it over to them to maintain, and they're going, "Can you explain?"
Mm-hmm.
And in my
Mm-hmm.
head, I'm going, "No, I just know that if you do this and that, then that happens." I I never been able to explain. I
It
was
seems
that kid.
so
I was that kid
obvious
in
to
high school.
you, the fact that you
It
even
is.
have to explain
It
it.
is.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
absolutely.
that kid in high school that my math teacher would drop a grade because I never showed my work.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the equation. Oh, okay. The answer is this. And he would get after me that you had my daughter cracks me up because she's a math teacher, okay? And that's exactly what she has to teach, right? You have to know how to every step in solving that equation. But she herself is like me, where I hate that. I just know the answer. I just want to write the answer.
Mm-hmm.
No, honey, you have to teach how to. So my
Yeah.
point being that where I can going back to solving a problem, I think that is to me the very best thing that you can teach a developer or a brand new developer.
Is what?
Because like you
What
said,
specifically do you
I don't
think?
care what language you use.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you know how to problem solve, that language will help you.
Mm-hmm.
So, because what you said earlier, I think you said it earlier, is people are sitting there going, "Oh, I use Python. Python's going to know how to do it." No, Python's not going to know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Python may have some framework, may have some
It's
functions that
all tools. It's not
it's
the
all it is.
solved problem. It is
Just because I have a
tools.
hammer doesn't mean the nail is going to get hit.
Yep.
That's not how it
You have a
works.
fancy power tool doesn't mean that you
Yeah.
are going to repair
All right. All
the
right.
exactly.
All right. That was Andrew Musholt from Hide Manufacturing. In the next several days, we're going to release the rest of that conversation. We talked. We had several discussions about LinkedIn, Facebook. We also talk about the why do why is it so hard to find volunteers that are software developers and a few other things. But until then, this is your host Luis, and we hope to talk to you soon.